Well, hello. This is Bill McKibben. What a pleasure to get to join everybody at General Conference, if only by video. Um, I, it, it, as a longtime Methodist, it's always good to know that you all are there doing the work that needs to be doing. And um, I just want to add a pitch for what I think is one of the most important projects on earth right now. And that's doing what we can to stand up for creation by hastening the transition off fossil fuel. I wrote the first book about what we now call climate change, what back in 1989 we called the greenhouse effect. And I've spent my life as a volunteer organizing to try and raise consciousness about all this in many, many ways. One of those ways has been starting this fossil fuel divestment campaign that's since become the biggest thing of its kind in history. We're at about $40 trillion in endowments and portfolios that have decided to break their ties with coal, gas, oil. And the reasons are fairly obvious. One, obviously, the problem has turned into a crisis now. Last year was the hottest year in the last 125,000 years. Um, People are dying in extraordinary numbers already, and they're almost all people in the poorest parts of the world who've done essentially nothing to cause the problem. All of Africa has put about 3% of all the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, compared with America, where we've put about 25% of it there. We're not loving our neighbors, we're drowning them. We're making it impossible for them to grow food. Um, and all of that is unnecessary because in the last 10 years, engineers have done an amazing job in dropping the price of renewable energy. It's 90% cheaper than it was 10 years ago. We now live on a planet where the cheapest way to produce power is to point a sheet of glass at the sun. People don't all realize that yet. I think we still think of uh, solar power and wind power as, alternative energy, as the kind of Whole Foods of energy, but it's the Costco of energy. It's the cheap stuff. And that's remarkable. This is a water into wine miracle, which allows us to imagine in very quick order that we could replace energy from hell with energy from heaven. The good Lord hung a large ball of burning gas 93 million miles away that bathes us with enough solar power to power our lives 20 times over. We catch its rays on the sun. We take advantage of the fact that it differentially heats the earth, producing the winds that turn those turbines. Um, thank heaven for it. If we can make this transition, we not only can blunt the climate crisis before it produces the 1 to 3 billion climate refugees that the UN currently predicts, but also we can save 9 million people a year, one death in five, which are attributable to breathing the byproducts of fossil fuel combustion, those particulates that lodge in the lungs and kill people. So you'd think we'd be doing it all out, except that the fossil fuel industry has done everything they can to prevent that happening, mounting enormous campaigns of disinformation. We now know from great investigative reporting that they knew all there was to know about climate change as far back as the 1980s when I was writing that first book. They knew all about it and they believed it. Exxon started building their drilling rigs higher to compensate for the rise in sea level that they knew was coming. But they didn't tell the rest of us. They engaged in an ongoing disinformation campaign that for 30 years delayed serious action. That denial has gotten harder and harder. Too many floods, too many fires. But now they engage in solutions denial, you might say, trying to prolong their business model a few more decades by claiming that the alternative energy isn't ready yet. Even though, say, in California this spring, Sun and wind and hydropower have been providing way more electricity than California even needs, day after day after day. So we need to break our ties with those companies who have let the profit motive get in the way of all the other motives. And that's why 1,600 organizations around the world have divested from fossil fuel. A third of those are faith organizations. I got to say, as a Methodist, it makes me just the tiniest bit, I don't know, sad or jealous that the Lutherans and the Episcopalians have done the right thing, that the Unitarians were there and the Quakers, that many, many Catholic organizations, including the Pope himself, have called for fossil fuel divestment. Look, our sisters and brothers in the British Methodist Church, which, if my Methodist history is correct, was the original Methodist Church, have divested as a witness to their commitment in Christ. Doing this doesn't come with a financial penalty, just the opposite. Fossil free funds outperform fossil fuel funds over the last decade, and that will continue because the world is making this transition. And that is good news because it means that there's not a penalty for doing the right thing. But even if there was, well, part of our job is to do the right thing. And so I have real confidence that that the United Methodist Church, which I love, will finally, somewhat belatedly, but speed has never been an extraordinary Methodist asset, at least in my lifetime, will somewhat belatedly decide that the time has finally come. Here's the only thing I would say: do not delay, do not postpone. Climate change is a timed test. It's not like other political questions we face. If we don't get it done soon, we will not get it done because once you melt the Arctic, no one's got a plan for freezing it back up again. And that's what we're doing right now, just as we're beginning to burn the edges of the rainforest because it's gotten so dry, just as we're now raising the levels of the ocean, just as we speak right now, extraordinary spike in ocean temperatures around the world is killing off most of the planet's coral reefs, one of the most extraordinary corners of God's brain. So I am very hopeful that we will all together take this step that it seems to me is absolutely demanded by the very first request we got in the good book, right there on the first page of Genesis, to take care of this planet that we have been gifted the right to live on. We were very, very lucky to get that gift. And it's our responsibility to respect that, to do the right thing right now while it still matters. Thank you.